Ooh. Hey friends. Hey friends. Kim McCann here, program developer at Prairie. Ooh. And your host for another episode of Happy Hour History, where we mix up some historical cocktails and talk about alcohol-related history. Have you been drinking a lot during quarantine? This might be the episode that you need.
Working from home, you feel so alone. Cabin fever's running high. 5 o'clock comes, it's happy hour, but all you do is sigh. When the cocktail hit the spot, it's time to just relax, mix up a bit of history. Go ahead, put the kids to bed, and please drink responsibly. Join me for Happy Hour History.
Today, instead of mixing up historical cocktails, what we're going to do is talk a little bit about historical hangover cures. Because since there's been alcohol, there have been hangover cures. Now, before we get to what might be the ridiculous, let's talk a little bit about what's practical. If you are going to imbibe, here are some things to think about. If you're going to consume alcohol, one of the things you might consider is to consume beverages that are low in congeners. Congeners are a classification of toxins that are produced during distillation, along with ethanol, which is the alcohol. These other toxins are produced, namely methanol, and those are the things that oftentimes lead to the sense of being hungover or having had a little too much to drink. The lower congener beverages are the lighter in color. So the darker the color, generally speaking, the higher the congeners. So things like tequila and whiskey, cognac, brandy, those are going to have higher congeners than a spirit like vodka or gin. So anyway, the higher the congeners, the more you take in, and the more you are prone to having something like a hangover. That's the first consideration. The second consideration is to definitely make sure that you're hydrated. So one of the effects of alcohol is that it dehydrates the system. Therefore, rehydrating as you drink or before you drink and after you drink is really important. A recommendation that is pretty common is that you have 1 glass of water in between every cocktail that you consume. So that's definitely going to cut down on the amount that you consume, but it's also definitely going to keep you hydrated. So those are some things that you can do to try to not have a hangover. But if you are past that point, if you're already there the morning after, then let's talk about what you can do for that. When you wake up in the morning and you're not feeling great, if you've got a case of morning fog or gallon distemper, gym jams, bottle ache, bust head, blue devils, crop stick, any of these things, these oldie-timey terms that were used to describe how you feel after the morning of drinking, if you're suffering from any of those, here's some advice that you can choose to follow or not to follow. The most common advice, I think that we've all heard before, is to have a little bit of the hair of the dog that bit you, which means exactly that. You go ahead and drink some more alcohol. Now, scientifically speaking, this can be beneficial because it helps to balance your blood sugars, but it also adds to the alcohol in your system. So not necessarily the best thing, but if alcohol makes you feel a little better, then that's how that science applies. That term, the hair of the dog that bit you, where does that come from? Well, it comes from medieval times when there was, believe it or not, a general thought that if you were bit by a rabid dog, the way to ensure that you would not get rabies was to take some of the hair from that same dog that bit you and either brew it into a tea and drink it, or rub that hair into the bite wound. So yes, medieval people were a bit, shall we say, inventive. They also had some other funny ideas about how to cure the jim jams. You could grind up some myrrh with bird beaks and eat that. That would definitely cure a hangover. Or if you're not into bird beaks, how about a little raw eel with some ground bitter almonds? Certainly that, after a night of drinking, would make you feel better. Now, that's not completely crazy when you consider some other cultures and their ideas of what would make you feel better. It was widely believed by some that if you scrubbed your testicles, men, or breasts, ladies, with vinegar after a night of drinking and then ate a piece of cabbage with some sugar on it, that would definitely solve your problems. The Greeks also believed that if you just simply wrapped your head in cabbage after a night of drinking, that would take care of a hangover too. I'm not sure what the fascination with cabbage is, but there you go. In some cultures, if you rub some lemon in the armpit of your drinking hand, that will make sure that you don't have a hangover, but also help you the next morning. Not sure how. You could sweat swish, which involved making some kind of movements that would ensure that you sweat, then licking the sweat off of your body until you had enough in your mouth to swish it around with your spit and then spit it out. I would rather have a hangover, to be honest. If none of that appeals to you, perhaps you would like to fall upon some hard 17th century science. The good Dr. Jonathan Goddard created a tablet for just such an ailment. And his hangover cure tablets included dried viper, ammonia, and the ground up skull of someone who had recently been hung. There's an option. All of these things lead me to believe it's better to not incur a hangover. By far, the best cure for a hangover is a nice glass of water, a couple of aspirin or ibuprofen, and a good hearty breakfast. But there are others who stand by a long heralded cure called the prairie oyster. The prairie oyster, my friends, look upon it and tremble. It is a half ounce of whiskey, a raw egg yolk, a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce, a few dashes of hot sauce, some salt, and pepper. Now, the scientific community would tell you that because alcohol depletes the proteins in your body and also dehydrates you, that the salt would help to add some hydration retention, and that the yolk would be an easily digestible source of protein to fill up what was lost from alcohol drinking. At this point, I don't believe in science. All right, if you thought I was going to do that, you're absolutely insane. I'm not hungover, and I am not drunk. I am not going to consume this beverage. But if you find yourself in a tight spot, that is a recipe for something. Good luck with that. I do want to say thank you so much. If you have watched these episodes and you have joined us along the way, we really appreciate it. This has been a very interesting time for all of us. And I hope that this series has given you a little bit of levity and a little bit of enjoyment. And we wish you all the best. So until we see each other again, cheers.